Great progress. We'll start with introductions. I'm Paul Rasmussen, Chair from Durham. Mike Levinsky, City of Somersworth.
Mark Richardson, Somersworth.
Joe Clayton, Rochester.
Mike Cleveland, Durham.
Kevin Sullivan, Rochester.
Michael Williams, Coast.
Sarah Waitsman, Newmarket.
Kate Beside, Middleton.
Downtown Barrington.
Steve Stansel, Wakefield.
Johnson Newt, Milton.
Don Mancher, Northwood. Tom Paul, Madbury.
Rachel Dooley, SRPC.
Continental, SRPC.
Mike Polarati, SRPC.
Colin Wentz, SRPC.
Jen Sis, SRPC.
Mark Davies down.
Lisa Murphy, SRPC.
Online.
You got here.
Kian McDermott, Dover.
Lindsay.
Lindsay Williams, Dover.
Steve.
Steve Diamond, Barrington. Steve Brown. Go ahead.
Steve Brown, Dover.
Krista.
Krista Zhang, rounding out the Dover team online.
Megan Spade.
Megan, our Zoom host.
Yes. All right. Commissioners Roundtable.
I've got something.
Everybody happy? Yes. Yes, Steve.
So CNN is reporting today that from Goldman Sachs that we should expect these kinds of gas prices for the next few years. So I thought, well, personally, I'm trying to do various things to change my approach to transportation. For instance, I got myself an e-bike, and you may remember that I dabbled in one wheel, and that's an interesting option. It's very small, it's pretty light, has interesting capability, but it takes some skill and it's a bit dangerous. Well, an e-bike is much more accessible for more people. And what I particularly got was a Velotrek Fold 1 Plus. So it can fold down to be a piece of hefty luggage, a little bit under 70 pounds, with a range of 50 miles at my weight, with some cargo. With a second 10-pound battery, you could go another 50 miles. The cost, of course, is far, far less than a full-size vehicle, especially when you consider gas. It also has the capacity for a good bit of cargo, 400 pounds. I've been collecting my maple sap for doing my my boiling with that bike. Anyway, so it's an interesting option. It'll fit in a suitcase. It'll fit in a trunk of a car easily enough. It's modular with various mass transit options. So in terms of municipal planning, when I think through how to get places from where I am, so its top speed is called Class 3. So e-bikes are organized based on classes, and Class 3 basically means the top speed is 28 miles per hour. That means you can keep up with traffic fairly well, as long as you have decent sight lines, so you could be seen, has pretty good lights, and a decent shoulder. Now, that's the problem with most of the state routes around here. You can't go very far or to very many places without running into some shoulders that are small. So the shoulders need to be smooth, and they need to be fairly spacious because there are still cars on the road, at least right now. Anyway, those are some thoughts I had on that. If you have any questions about e-bikes, let me know, and be thinking about alternatives because more people will be. Thanks.
They go up to 35 now. My neighbor just had one, and he had it, I watched it. It was going 35 miles an hour. So that's obviously battery, I'm assuming?
Yes, it's, I mean, you can have, there are motorcycles and then there's a whole gradation between, but in terms of the class rated ones, 1, 2, and 3, 28 is the max.
Thank you very much. Yeah, for Rochester, kind of on that note with e-bikes, there was some interest in removing bike lanes from Rochester by one of the committees, but that died, I think, last night. So that's not going to happen. So the bike lanes will stay. There was concern about safety of bike lanes It was unclear if the safety was for the biker or the people opening their doors into the bike lane, I guess, or like stepping out of their car. But yeah, that died, so that's good. I was gonna say for Rochester, if anybody is paying any attention, there's a lot going on with the schools. But one of the biggest decisions they made recently is to close another school. So if you guys are familiar with the Maple Street School, that one's gonna close at the end of this year. And then the other two schools that they closed last year, William Allen and School Street, they're gonna put an RFP out for development. I think they were getting kind of census of the community of what they wanted to do with it. I haven't heard any results of that yet, but so that's interesting. We'll see what they'll do with those buildings. I think a lot of people are saying no more housing. That's kind of the same sentiment that came from, and I don't mean no more housing. I mean, they just don't want no more. I think they think that our residents think we have enough of this, like density housing. So they want single family housing, I guess, as opposed to that. But so we'll see. The same with the court. The court in downtown is going to come up pretty soon, and that's kind of the initial census was don't make a bunch of apartments in it.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why are they closing the school? Is it enrollment?
So it's budget. So a lot of the municipalities now, right, are having the same problem because the state, and the feds, I think, but the state is kind of rolling back on they're getting tighter on their state aid. And so that's making it difficult for the school budgets for a lot of municipalities. This one has been it was building, the problem was building, I think, for Rochester's funding for the schools. That particular school is the smallest enrollment, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say, it's the smallest school. I think it's like 110 kids total or something. The building is in horrible shape. Both of my children went there and I agree with that. Like the lead levels are high, like I think they're above the allowable limit in the drinking fountains and stuff. So
That's crazy.
yeah, it's just, there's a lot of work that's needed. So I think they're just seizing the opportunity of, we're $4.5 million short. They predict closing that school will save them 1.9 million of that 4.5. So they're gonna try to move. They believe that all the positions will be able to take other positions throughout the city, the school system.
Class size.
Was that well, they actually were saying this would raise the class size a little bit, but there was the other option was to, the other option they were trying to do is, because if you guys know, the Maple Street School is a special school, it's a magnet program, which I guess the state has said you can't do that. So you can't have a lottery to put people in the school. It needs to be the regular enrollment unless it's a charter school. So there was another option of keeping the magnet school separate, and I think they said that would have a bigger impact because they'd have to keep the teachers. They wouldn't be able to have, because they're small classrooms. So I think they said that if they did that, that would make classroom size go to 25 per student because they couldn't add like extra third grade class. So I think this one is the least impactful. I don't remember the size that this one would be with that, but it's less, so it would be less than the alternative, which came up and said it was 25 or 29 per class. I think it was 25 per class. I think our biggest classes right now are 22 per class.
So is enrollment going up or down?
Enrollment's going down. So probably maybe nationwide, but statewide, right? Enrollment's going down. I think they said we're down just at the high school, 600 students in the past 10 years, maybe it is. I can't remember the time frame they gave, but it's definitely going down. There is a large cohort, I think, in the elementary schools right now compared to the middle school. But yeah, but overall the trend is enrollment's going down. So, and we did close Nancy Loud, William Allen, and School Street over the past 2 years, and they maintained all of the positions, which is an interesting concept, right? So that's what they're doing. But that's a big thing. It just happened, they voted to close it. I think the plan is the end of this year, and then they'll, just like the other ones, give the building back to the city, and then we'll decide what to do with it. So, yeah. Can I get one more? Sorry, I know it's taking a lot of time, but the Care Pharmacy project, if you guys know about that, the state bought that. The city bought that. And the plan was it sat vacant for 7 years, I think, with no interest, and we're trying to get some movement on that. And we did have 2 presentations last Tuesday. It was in Foster's twice, I think. You can watch it online if you want. But they're basically, it's for housing. That was the plan. Housing, mixed use housing, commercial. One of them is a very large building. And then I want to say 8 townhouses at the back of the property, which would total like 150 units. And they're also talking about these for affordable housing. It's not rent, it's not like a HUD thing, but they're doing what they call micro apartments, which are like, I think he said studio, you know, obviously with a bathroom and a bed, but it would have like, you know, it's a studio, so it would have like a Murphy bed concept. And those would be, they thought, under $1,000 a month, which would be, you know, pretty cheap rent. You know, it's not a huge place, but it's pretty cheap for that. The other one was all kind of like townhouses. And some of those would be sold. So some would be kept by the developer, leased or rented, and other ones would be sold. The first option didn't have that, but it was really a 6-story building, I think, and then 8 townhouses was the first one. The second was all townhouses. So that'd be interesting. The city had those presented on Tuesday, got public input on those. There was mixed sentiment on the public input. Some people want nothing, obviously. Some people like the townhouses because it looks more neighborhoody, less city. And then there's another group of people that just say, you know, Rochester bought it for 3.36 million. We want you to give back 3.36 million. So that's kind of, so it's like a mixed thing on that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that, Kevin, was the developers are saying that once this gets approved, they're thinking about 24 months. So pretty reasonably quickly.
Yeah, well, one of them, actually, which is ironic, the biggest one, because they're from Boston and they do these in Boston. They are vertically integrated, they call it, so they don't have to find contractors, they do it all. Like, it's not like them, the other company's not the same, the other company's a developer and they hire contractors. This company has everything, so from start to finish, it's them. So they said they could start and be done within 24 months, and they said a similar project of size they did in Boston, which they said is harder to build in, they did it in 18 months, so they think it can actually happen fast, whereas you see some of the other projects take years, like multiple, like much longer than 2 years.
So I just want to do a plug for one of our programs, that your updates prompted. So we have a brownfields program, Lisa behind you all, wave. Lisa operates the brownfields program. So if a municipality owns a structure or has an interest in a structure and the property owner consents, we have funding that you and your municipality can use to do a phase 1 or phase 2 environmental assessment on the structures or sites. We also in that pool have redevelopment planning funds. The whole objective is to get properties that may either be or be perceived to be contaminated back into active use. And part of those phase 1, phase 2s includes hazardous building materials. So mentioning the school of lead made me think of that. So we pay 100% of the cost of those engineering studies through a grant from EPA.
Well said. No match.
Yeah.
We recently did hazardous building materials for the town of Somersworth for a library expansion. So we're here to help.
Sure. So just to close the loop on the e-bike, Vespa, motorcycle conversation, just to plug, wear your helmet, you know, as someone that learned the hard way, you know, keep a helmet on. For an update on Farmington, the town and some selectmen had a meeting with the EPA and members of DES. EPA's Region 1 Administrator Mark Sanborn, who probably many of you know, met with us to talk about the Collins and Aikman site, Davidson Rubber, if you're familiar with that site on Route 11. It has been a designated Superfund site for many years. A record of decision on proposed cleanup methods was recorded in July, which is a milestone step for that. It's been roughly 20 years that we've been sort of waiting to get to this point. So we are now actively starting to think about some redevelopment of that site while they move forward with the cleanup of the area that we're not gonna be able to do much in for a while. But it was good to hear from EPA's perspective that I think they can start to maybe move the needle a little bit on that. So, one of the reasons I bring it up now is if there are folks in this room that have experience with Superfund sites. I don't have as much. I've done a little bit more in brownfields than Superfund. So if anybody has experience with Superfund, I'd be happy to come talk with me just so I can get a little bit more information about how it's been successful elsewhere. Because this is starting to just kick off now. The last thing I want to mention to put my SRPC hat on is everybody should have received the save the date, but I do want to plug SRPC's annual meeting. It is set for Thursday, June 25th, 4:30 to 7:30. We have secured a location. It's going to be at the Oaks Golf Club in Somersworth. We are going to be celebrating our 55 years of regional planning. We didn't get to celebrate 50 because it was a COVID year. So we're going to use this opportunity to sort of look at what the Planning Commission has done over the last 55 years, what sort of things should we be thinking about for the future. I'm probably going to be reaching out to several of you that have been in the region for a while. Steve, you're on my list to chat with you. I've already talked to Chris and Jack Nettie and Cynthia Copeland and others that have been actively involved in leadership with the Planning Commission and planning in the region in general. So if you've got thoughts about hey, this was a milestone project in the region in the 70s or 80s or anything like that that was before us, please let us know. So for folks that have been here for a while, come talk to us because we'd love to sort of include those big projects. That's it.
I have a quick SRPC update. We are considering moving away from Zoom for our hybrid component of this meeting. We're evaluating Teams. I've got a couple of test meetings set up this afternoon at 2 and 2:30. If anyone's available and would like to hop on virtually and just give us feedback on the Teams meeting platform compared to the Zoom platform from your end as our commissioners, we would love that kind of feedback. If anyone's interested, please reach out to Megan or I, and we'll get you the invitation links. I've got to run, but enjoy the meeting.
I want to put a plug in for a seminar that I attended this past week. New Hampshire Housing sponsored. It was a look at how zoning impacts what's built in your town and the impacts financially as well. The speaker is a woman named Ivy Van. I thought it was a great speaker. They're going to be doing more seminars on that. Sarah can give you the details of the when and the where, and I'm sure she'll share that with everybody as they become available. But it was really a well done seminar in 4 hours about time.
Thank you. There's one in Ossipee on Friday, May 1st. I think registration's not quite open yet, but will be soon if anybody wants to go up to the lakes Friday afternoon. And then we're doing a Seacoast one Friday, June 26th. The registration's not open for that one yet.
I served with Ivy in the legislature.
Shara's whip. Yeah, she's wicked smart.
We had in our planning board meeting the other night, we had a second conceptual hearing on the conversion of the Holy Trinity Church on High Street to a housing facility. The church would be removed and a new facility. There'd be 171 apartments. As you know, we've had several large housing developments in the city of Somersworth. Either the 67 Elm Street is now being occupied, which is kind of cool to see people in there. So we're making our progress towards meeting our goal of housing. But this one is kind of special. It is on High Street. There is potential for some traffic issues there. But one of the things we're finding with developers coming into Somersworth is they're actually talking to their neighbors, knocking on doors, talking to them. This is who we are. This is what we want to do. How can we involve you in the process to keep you happy neighbors and that kind of thing. And these people have done it very well. They want to get out to more neighbors. They want to, explore it even more. But beyond the development itself, which is gonna be open to the community as well. They're having some commercial space in it, but they're having space inside for conference rooms that the public can use, and other resources in there they want the public to be able to come into the building and include them, and be part of a neighborhood kind of thing. But they're looking at the trails that go out behind that property to make a connection all the way over to Millennium Park and then possibly into the Malley Farm area beyond that too. So my question was, are people gonna be able to have dogs that are lit and that kind of thing, so they can walk them out there and all that? And it's a likelihood. But the biggest thing that impressed me is that out of the 171, 75 are 2 bedrooms. So we're getting, the ones that we've had 2 bedrooms have been half dozen, maybe, if they can squeeze them in somewhere, mostly studio and 1 bedroom. And I always look at the second bedroom as, there could be bunk beds in there. We could actually be getting kids maybe into a development like this. And they talk about community. Well, there's nothing better in a community than having kids in your community. So, we haven't voted on anything yet because they're doing it the right way. So they're coming back with additional ideas. They came back with their second conceptual hearing. And I suspect that it won't be long before we get a full-blown application for approval from them. Doing it right. So.
You have 3 folks online, Paul. Steve, first. All right, thank you. Steve, Jen?
Yes, about Teams, the planning board used Teams for a while. I was not very impressed. I know there probably could be some problems with Zoom, but it means that Linux users, it's almost impossible to use Teams in Linux, last I checked. So think twice about switching to a Microsoft product.
Hey, Steve. I can't really, can you close Kian also.
Kian?
Lindsay was up first.
I couldn't see the hand there.
I know it's hard on the screen. Thanks, everyone. So just a couple quick updates. One, I'm not on the planning board in Dover, so don't have all the specifics, and I was trying to look quickly, but we do have a couple larger developments either underway or recently approved, continuing to try to meet Dover goals around both affordable housing and also just having a diverse housing stock. And that has consistently been one of the goals of City Council the last couple of years. So I think folks are encouraged to see that continuing proposals continue to come in and trying to balance, obviously, the community impact, the environmental impact, but also making sure that we're contributing to housing stock. I did also want to make sure that folks were aware there have been some pretty ongoing intense conversations in Dover recently, particularly around the milfoil in Willand Pond. And so if anybody has experience with milfoil or would like to chat further, ultimately the council's decision was to go forward with a diver-assisted suction harvest method, which was a little bit different than the state recommended plan. But I know that there's a lot of folks interested in figuring out a long-term plan to improve Willand Pond. But I was just thinking in our regional capacity, if that is another issue that other communities, obviously Somersworth connected to Willand Pond, but maybe other communities, I think it was an interesting and challenging process, and there might be some joint learning we could do about how to manage dealing with this issue in the sort of intersection of recreation, human health, environment, water, all of that. And then lastly, wanted to just share on behalf of a colleague of mine, and maybe this already got circulated, but UNH Cooperative Extension is running an outdoor economy academy coming up this spring. So particularly folks looking at the intersection between the environment, outdoor, and economic development downtowns, and sort of healthy environment. There's 3 visits. I put the link in chat. Somebody can maybe grab that and add that to the notes. But I thought others in this group might be interested in that upcoming training or a networking opportunity. Thanks.
Just a comment for you. Barrington is wrestling with that very issue, particularly Swains Lake and milfoil invasion. And so connect with me offline and I give you a whole encyclopedia of things that we've done, are doing and plan to do, going forward, so. Good place to
Excellent.
start.
Great. Thank you so much.
My cabin in Maine, our lake had similar issues, and one of the big things that was implemented that really stopped it from repeating was having volunteers at the boat launch, ensuring that boats going in and out were cleaned and didn't have anything on them ahead of time. I mean, once it's in the waterway, it gets remarkably difficult. You need to keep it out of the waterway and keep it from coming back or it's ready. And
Great. Thank you.
Northwood has paid people to do that.
This is great. If anybody wants to have a sub working group, I may, yeah, realizing it's a regional issue. Yeah, thank you so much.
Ready? Oh, okay. So Dover is in the process of kicking off, jumpstarting its 10-year update to its transportation chapter of the master plan. So that's an opportunity for our community to look back at the last 10 years of kind of our transportation development and projects that have occurred, but also, and then start to plan, kind of the future of what transportation looks like for Dover. But also, I think where it applies to this body too is like, how is Dover both part of a bigger part of the region? How do the interconnection points at last SRPC meeting, we had a bit of a discussion on the tragedy of the death on Old Rochester Road, and that's one of those points where maybe we start to think about what the future of these interconnections that are shared spaces look like, and maybe not individual projects at this point, but what does the vision look like as we start to think about how people move through those spaces? And it's just an opportunity to talk more about some of the things we really all care about. So if you have input or want to chat about that, I'll be on that committee as we move forward, and I'm really looking forward to it. So.
I just want to say that we are going to be working on the Dover Transportation Master Plan chapter along with partners at VHB. So
Yes.
we're looking forward to it.
Anything more from staff? All right, then, moving on to our next item, we have minutes from March 20th. Any discussion there?
The minutes from February 20th.
February 20th. I read and didn't think, yes.
Well, just a note, I was attending that meeting. Unless I missed it, I didn't see my name in the grocery list of reductions.
Anything else?
Jar of pickles. I'll move to approve with the addition of Mike's name.
Moved by Michael Williams.
Second by Newt.
Seconded by John Newt. All in favor, roll call, Paul Rasmussen, aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
wasn't there, so I abstain.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye. Abstain online. Steve,
Aye.
William Z,
Hi.
Steve Diamond,
Aye.
Steve Brown.
Aye.
Krista Jang, aye.
Gwen.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Regional Plan Workshop. Hey.
Are folks online able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Great, so I will, so for the remainder of the meeting, we're going to be chatting a bit about the regional plan, which has been an ongoing project over the last year. And we are scheduled to complete it at the end of this calendar year. So I'll start by giving just a quick overview reminder of the components of the regional plan and how they're each going to be adopted at different times. So for the next update for the Stratford Regional Plan, we are leveraging the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is being updated this year, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, the SED, which is being updated this year, to feed into the plan as the economic development and land use, and transportation sections of this broader plan. And then we're also going to be doing chapters related to land use and environment as well. And at the end, we're going to be creating an executive summary bridge document that's going to tie all of the different areas together from these three components to have one cohesive plan at the end of the year, which will act as kind of the regional vision for the Stratford region for the next 10 years. So some of the key dates are listed up here on the screen. The SEDS is set to be adopted in June. It is the furthest along thanks to all of the input from you all and your assistant and the strategy committee. The MTP is under construction as well, and that is set to be adopted in September of this year. And then towards the end of the year in November and December, we're going to be completing the land use environment section and also that executive summary and bridge document that's going to tie everything together. So for the first few minutes of this part of our meeting today, I wanted to just quickly go over and remind folks of where the SEDS is at. So the lenses, themes, and goals have been finalized. So this was thanks to all of your help over past meetings and our strategy committee. Starting on page 8 of your packets are the final themes, lenses, and goals for the SEDS. So we have 4 lenses that are kind of the overarching principles that are going to touch on all areas of what we talked about. To promote economic development, job creation, employment in the region, and that's regional partnerships and collaboration, resiliency, quality of life and community identity, and age friendliness. And then also up here, just to quickly remind you all of our final themes, we have housing as a critical component of economic development in our region, supporting businesses, innovation, and entrepreneurship, supporting workforce development, education, and child care, and then ensuring that our communities are healthy and vibrant. And all of the, I didn't want to put all the goals up here again because there's a lot of them, it's a lot of text on the screen, but those are all in your packets, organized by the different thematics. So the next component of the SEDS is developing the action items that support all of the different goals that are outlined in your meeting packet. So I believe it starts on page 11. So the pages go landscape and there's some colored photos. We went through our previous SEDS and identified the different action items that we can take as an organization that were relevant to bring forward into our new SEDS. And then we also generated some new action items to support the rework and new themes and goals that were developed for this next 5-year set of the next 5-year timeline for our SEDS. So these are in draft form and they're organized based on which theme they align most closely with. And then there's also a section at the start for action items that support all of the themes. So what we are going to do for a few minutes, kind of a rapid fire activity, Jen and Mark are setting up different posters around the room. There are 5 of them. And what are on these posters are the same draft action items that are in your slides. And everyone's going to be getting 10 sticky dots. And what we are asking you to do is use 2 dots per poster. So you only get a very limited amount. And you can put both of those dots on one action item. You can do one on one action item, one on another. And we're asking what
feels like the kind of highest priority action underneath that. There's also a section at the bottom of the poster, and we're going to distribute sticky notes around the room too, where you have additional ideas about the action items, or any additional feedback or things that could be action items underneath these thematic areas. We ask you to write those up on the sticky note and stick that onto the poster, or you could write on the poster. So yeah, so we are asking folks to, we don't have too much of a crowd, maybe 2 or 3 people go to each different poster around the room. And we're asking that you spend no more than 2 or 3 minutes at each poster. We'll keep a clock and we'll just ask folks to rotate around the room to the next poster in a clockwise fashion, so that we can get some initial quick feedback on these draft action items for the sentence. Sound good? Any questions?
Yes, Michael, if we have comments about, the other stuff, the themes and goal statements, how do you want us to provide those?
So those are in final form, at this point.
We can make some revisions, but we're not gonna make big revisions. Fine tuning.
Sure, yeah, we can do fine tuning. Our strategy committee has accepted them at this point, and we took the round of feedback we did with you all, and incorporated them in. But if there are, pressing things that need adjustment, then we can do some fine tuning.
You changed some, well, yeah, so, and I don't know if you want to talk about it now, or if there's time after we do the dot things, maybe I can bring up, otherwise I can talk to you offline. Just the wording from the lenses down to some of the themes and goals changed in a few places, and it also kind of changed the connotations.
Sure.
Not necessarily in a good way, at least from my perspective. All right, let's get started with the dots then.
A couple of questions.
Yes, Steve.
After the action items are set, say in the 5-year plan, is there gonna be an annual plan then created from that 5-year? And in the annual plan, do you get down to more specific action items? My issue here as a bucket is that I don't see these as action items. These are objectives. An action item, and you can Google it, is something that's very specific. It also, it identifies the task and who it's assigned to. It has a clear deadline and identifies the measurable results. So to give you an example,
it has a clear ending.
It has a clear ending. And so almost every one of these uses the term support, continue to work with, cultivate. Those are technically not action items. And as a planner, it just bothers me. An action item would be, say, for example, maintain open communication with businesses and municipalities regarding economic development issues. So that's what's listed here as an action item. I would say that a clear action item working towards that would be work with ED organizations, businesses, and communities to create a series of workshops regionally to be held a minimum of 2 or 3 times a year. That's more specific. It can be graded, you can determine it. And so that's why, I guess these are okay for a 5-year, but I'm wondering when we get down to the annual, can we get down to more specific action items that are measurable?
So I don't believe our action items change in language between what we do in our 1-year updates and our 5.
But that doesn't mean they can't.
I would need to check EPA guidance.
Yeah, I think, yeah, so Steve, I hear what you're saying. I think part of what we need to do is we need to now articulate the how we do these things.
Yeah.
And that's what you're speaking to.
Yeah, I have, we create plans, we're planners. These plans go on shelves. Sometimes they just have dust on them.
Right.
The plans that actually get actuated are the ones that say, this is how we're gonna do this. And this is when it's gonna be done, by who, and what's the measurable. That's how a plan gets put into effect. So, I could take these action items and I could probably look at Oswego, New York's CED, and it'd be probably the same. You know, how is Wakefield?
Yeah.
How do we benefit from these action items? There has to be, I think, I would recommend when we get down to the annual. Personally, I prefer we change the term action items, because I don't, again,
Can we say?
the definition of action.
So they need to be action items. I would definitely recommend folks in this room, if you do have feedback, and Steve, especially taking yours into consideration, to please articulate that on the posters and send it to Natalie and I over an email, and we'll take down notes as well.
Okay.
The plan needs to be adopted in June, so we need to ensure that the feedback that you all have today is collected by us in an effective way to be able to make these changes. We have our strategy committee meeting next week where we're going to do this activity with them, but then after that point, we won't really have much time to make additional changes. So I would just ask folks to please be very thoughtful with your feedback today, and then follow up that you have with Natalie and I.
For what it's worth, I concur with Steve. And when I work with big industry, sometimes as many as 10,000 employees, 80% of my work is done when they get to the point where they're defining action items in a way that they can actually say that to the employee and they both know what the mission is. When they get to that point, 80% of my work is done, and they get it.
That's like, I highlighted my comments bold here, you might just want to look at them,
Okay.
those guys did a better job but it's similar, it's like.
Yeah, please send your comments to Natalie and I. That would be very helpful in this process. One thing to remember too is these are actions that we can do as an organization. We are not outlining actions for other organizations to do. So we have to make sure that they're within the bounds of what we offer as services as well.
Right. I just think we need to be cognizant of the terms we use, particularly if we are going to call them action items. Continue to maintain, cultivate, those are not action items. I'm sorry.
They're everyday activities.
They're objectives, yeah, they're what we're trying to do, but I think we need to get down to the specifics. That's all.
All right, so.
My concern is, and I agree with this conversation, is we don't have the resources to do all these quote unquote action items. So I think we need to differentiate between an action item that we can do and an objective that we support. They are different. I agree with you, Steve, because if I look through this, we don't have resources to do.
So that's why only 2 dots per poster. Because we do need to kind of synthesize it, we do need to prioritize it, and I think, I don't know, maybe, listening to this and thinking about next steps, is we take the feedback on what we at least have here now, and those that rise to the top, within each category, we better flesh out and make them and show how they are actionable and measurable. And we boil our energy down to focus on those that rise to the top. Those that don't rise to the top, they can go into the narrative as here are some other objectives that we strive to achieve, but we focused on these priorities.
Yeah, it's very important that we be able to accomplish the task.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So let's start picking
And I
up the ones we
appreciate
think
that.
should be priorities. So, and each one of these posters is different, right?
Yep, they are, yeah.
Yeah, so please, we want to check them all out before you start putting too many dots.
Yeah. They give 2 weeks to Friday.
Yeah, I think I should
Mike or Jen, do you mind muting the room so that the online folks can chat? Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So yeah, I'll just help host the online portion for voting on the action items for the set. So please let me know if everyone was able to open that link that I sent in the chat. Okay, great. So yes, you can, why don't we use the thumbs up emoji for voting? Um, let's see, do you all have, you probably don't have the ability to leave comments, right? Or do you? You do, okay,
Yeah, I
great.
think so.
Yeah, if you want to add anything, please feel
Yeah, we
free.
can add comments.
Okay, that sounds good. One thing I didn't have time to touch on, because I know we're running short on time with the overall group, but I completely agree with the comment that was made that we want to make sure that the actions are things that we can just take a look at and basically check off, be able to check off and say, was this something that I was able to complete? I just wanted to mention, like in the past, that's something that we've differentiated with the action items. Action items have been ongoing action items. I think we called it ongoing and what ongoing meaning like these are things that always happen, like there is no deadline in sight. But for example, like the Tri-Region Economic Development Stakeholders Group, that's something that we host every single month, so it's ongoing. And then a separate category for those action items that do have an end in sight. So these, when we pulled these forward for this update, you'll see that those aren't differentiated in that way, but they're mixed in. Like, for example, one thing that I can probably point out is complete the Regional Housing Needs Assessment Implementation Project and promote it as a tool for municipalities looking for guidance on balancing housing production needs with environmental protection. Like that is something that we're expecting to end fall of 2020, or I guess winter 2020, 26. So yeah, maybe one thing to think about is maybe we continue to separate those two things. Just wanted to throw that out.
I didn't personally quite follow what is being asked of us at the moment. Could you just sort of explain that?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry about that. So what Mike was saying is these are the action items that were developed based on the goals that we have been developing based on the strategy committee feedback and based on your all's feedback. So um yeah, you just need to vote on each action item. So the first column, all those action items apply to all of the themes in the sets. And then there's the 4 themes that follow. So just use 2 votes basically. So what he was saying is in-person folks get 2 sticky dots to vote. You want to prioritize the actions that are listed on here. So what is the priority for what are the 2 priorities for housing? What are the 2 priorities for business innovation and entrepreneurship and so on? Does that answer your question, Steve? Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Natalie, I'm just wondering if we can like safely assume that some of the items that are on here that kind of have to be done, we can not vote on, like treads, it has to happen. Can we just skip that?
I think if it's a priority, I would say vote on it because, I mean, yeah. Strategy committee has to happen. Treads is it's an effort that we've like tried to continue. And we've, in the past, like this was something that was funded by the state and then they stopped funding it, but we found a way to like make it fit still within our work. So we've pushed it forward. But yeah, we want to know that there is support to keep on pushing it forward.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, the two categories I was talking about before in our previous sets and how we differentiated them, there's ongoing for those things that don't have an end in sight, and the other category is in progress for those things that are more like checklist type things. This is done. We completed it. But those are not, they're not separated in this way, just to be clear, here in the activity.
Natalie, it seems like there's opportunities, lots of overlap between some of these things. And some of them might be the kind of, here's a goal, like cultivate good partnerships. And then there's, this is how we'll do it, right? Then they seem to be nested. Is that something you might want us to comment on and say you could combine these or integrate them?
Yeah, do you mean within the themes or do you mean
Within the themes, yeah.
within the themes? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will, since it's hard to make like a general comment on the Padlet like that, I will make sure that I make it in my notes so that I can share it with the rest of the team. So. Was there anything specific that you were looking at, Steve, just so I can take a look at it?
Well, for example, cultivate strong relationships with a wide variety of organizations, and then maintaining open communication with so it's like, okay, if we want to cultivate positive relationships, we have to maintain open communications. Like those are, both connected.
Yeah,
or
I hear.
Connected to each other, right?
That makes sense. We're gonna take 3 more minutes for this activity.
I will not get done in 3 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, we're so tight on time. But this Padlet is going to remain open. So if you need to do anything post the meeting, please feel free to do so. Okay, I'm starting to see some themes rise to the top. Or some action items, I should say. It being 10 a.m., it looks like Mike will probably unmute and we'll move into the next activity. But until then, please feel free to take this time and keep on working on this if you need to.
All right, thank you all, and like we shouted out earlier, for more feedback, please email Natalie and I. We're going to be doing a similar activity to this with a little bit more time with our Economic Development Strategy Committee next Friday. So we're hopeful to bring forward any feedback you all provide on the posters and provide over email to them and kind of synthesize some stronger action items. Thank you all.
Yeah. Are you going to send something out to us saying this is what this came out?
Yes.
Yep.
It looked pretty evenly distributed.
There's gonna be some key ones, but. Yeah, so I will say that the language used in these drafted action items is very similar to what was in the last 5-year sets. So I think us moving towards more actionability is a good thing for this next 5 years. Folks online, are you all able to hear us and see the screen again? Cool. All right, so I just wanted to spend one quick minute on some other sets items regarding some draft vision statements that were developed for the sets overall, which we're going to ask you all for some feedback on after this meeting through like a little Microsoft form. So that'll get sent out after this meeting today. And then I also wanted to just share a reminder about the priority project solicitation, which was launched at the start of the month. So just as a reminder, priority projects are things submitted by public entities like municipalities or nonprofits. They can be private-public partnerships as long as a public entity is kind of a lead on the project. Projects need to align with our SEDS thematic areas. And having a project in the SEDS opens it up to a potential for Economic Development Administration funding, but it really kind of the main reason to have a project in the SEDS nowadays is to show that a project in a community or in a small part of our region aligns with the broader kind of regional goals and regional vision for economic development. It can help strengthen other funding applications for grants or different things like that. In the past, organizations have leveraged being in the SEDS to go after other funding, and we've written letters of support for them to help them go after this. So it is definitely useful to have a project in the SEDS in your community. The deadline for priority project submissions is the end of the month on the 31st. We have already reached out to all of the kind of representatives from communities and organizations who have submitted projects in the past and are working with them to either update those projects to ensure that they align with the new SEDS so that they can continue keeping them in the SEDS and ask for new projects. We've also reached out to points of contact with all of the municipalities in our region to ask if there are any new projects to submit to the SEDS. So I would ask all of you to maybe remind folks in your community, like town managers or town engineers. I think the more times they hear this from different people, the more likely they are to potentially submit a project that is happening or planned to happen in the community into the SEDS. So please reach out to me if you do have any questions about how to submit a project. It's a fairly easy form online, or we can provide a paper form that we can enter the data in. But we just ask that all of that is completed by the 31st of the month.
Do you have a question on
that? Krista, your hand's up.
I think that's very old. Sorry.
Or Any other questions on priority projects? Okay. Oh, so for the remainder of our time, we would like to chat a little bit about some of the other components of the regional plan, so transportation topics and land use topics. So some of the other sections in your meeting packets kind of identify really draft thematic areas for these different plans. So the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is a little bit further along than the land use and environment section. So what we're asking folks to do for the remainder of this call is decide if you want to talk about land use and environment or transportation. And then depending on that decision, we'll ask folks to kind of filter over to one corner of the room where we will gather a little bit more feedback from you all regarding some of the drafted thematic areas presented in your packet. So I think in terms of corners of the room, you have a preference where you want to go? Maybe if you're interested in chatting about transportation, over that way towards that corner of the room. And then if you're interested in chatting a bit more about the land use and environment draft thematic areas, filter over to that corner of the room. So we'll give folks a minute to do that, and then we'll go in the room. For the folks online, Natalie is going to be leading a similar discussion. Give some feedback from you all on both of them. And then
One quick note, we will give everyone, just a blank note card because we know we're forcing you to choose one topic or the other. So our note card is if you have comments on yours that you just didn't get a chance to express, or if you have comments for the other group, that you wanted to express, but you weren't in that group, we still want your notes. So we'll leave everyone with a note card here so you can jot us down some notes. All right. Making you busy.
Wow.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Jen. So for the online folks, I threw a link in the meeting chat, and that is just our, it's our meeting packet, but that includes what Mike is referencing. So if you go to page 16 in the meeting packet, 16, you'll see the Stratford MTP draft themes and goals. And some overall questions that we're looking for you to answer is, are the themes distinct enough as presented? So we want to make sure that there isn't too much overlap between them. Do the draft goals strike a good balance between aspiration and realism? And are there any major topics that aren't covered or that you think should be highlighted more? And then below that, you'll see each theme for transportation, and then starting on page 19, you'll see the themes, proposed lenses, and initial draft goals for the land use and environment portion. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of time. I think we went a little bit over some of the other parts, so we'll have 12 minutes for both of these. So I know it's a big ask. But if we all want to get started on the transportation one, if you can, since this isn't a Padlet, so you can't leave any comments, you can let me know. And I have a notes document going, so I can add your notes to it. So just let me know any thoughts that you have.
I was talking with Colin the other day on the phone about transportation stuff, and I was looking at the bike level of stress map, and it was I guess what I'm hoping for is better tools to find the safest ways to get places. It's a bit of a maze. You see all these red areas that means it's dangerous in one way or another or unappealing, and it's how do you find coherence in all the data is the challenge. So I would love to come up with some kind of way of like, even just for me, or as an example, like I don't know how to get places, even though I'm kind of a policy wonk on the best ways of getting places. There's not safe ways because there's these obstacles every which way you go.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I think that would fit really well into the reduce gaps and barriers in the pedestrian. We would call it maybe active transportation network instead of just pedestrian, but there could be broader, but I think speaking as both as a Dover resident and involved in that, but then also on the Seacoast area bicycle riders, that is a common thread that we hear from a lot of people. Dover does not have a bicycle and pedestrian plan. That was identified in the 2016 chapter as something that they need to have worked on, but it is unfortunately has not risen to the level of priority to kind of really designate the time and effort to do that. But that's, I think, part of this missing piece of information that would help Steve, help myself to get to and from places safely. So I think yes, I think I agree with that draft goal, but I would also say maybe include bicycles as well, or other sorts of non-car transportation. So
What I find exciting, not to be too negative, that we do have this huge network of colonial era roads that go everywhere you might want to go, and especially if you have a little bit of help from an e-bike to get over a little bit rougher terrain, a little bit of rehabbing of what is already there, and it's just been neglected for a long time, could find coherence. I intend
Are
to
you
work on
talking
that.
about like class 6 roads?
Some of them are class 6 roads. A lot of them are not even classified as a class anymore. They're just there as a trail that no one has maintained for a lot of years.
Part of the reason I ask about that is because, as a surveyor, I deal with all of the old roads and things like that. And maintaining property rights and access rights on things like class 6 roads or abandoned roads, old, like you say, colonial era trails, starts getting into some of those property rights issues that I could see being problematic. Honestly, I would much rather prefer to see old rail lines and honestly better public transportation as far as like buses, trolleys, whatever, across the whole region.
Sure, those are all good things. I think at least in Barrington, a lot of this land is Conservation Commission managed, so it is somewhat coherent, and I don't think it's broken up by property owners so much.
A goal I'm slightly confused by in this section is the increased passenger rail frequency through the region, only in that are we trying to increase the number of people from Maine and Massachusetts that are taking the train, or is it people in our region that are taking the train to Maine and Massachusetts? Or people taking the train from Dover to Exeter, or so Maine luckily has a robust budget, more robust than the state of New Hampshire, and so they subsidize their train. So you can take a train from Brunswick to Portland for $4. If you take the train from Dover to Exeter, it's $13 or $14. So I think the biggest intra-regional, I think, is kind of out of the question when you think about the alternatives and the cost, unless it is the option for people to be able to get from one town to the other. But I guess I want to see what the spirit of that goal is, and what are the action items to kind of how are we getting more people onto trains? I love the idea of more people using rail to get places. It's just to which places and from which places, and who and why.
Okay. That makes total sense, and I wish I could answer that question for you, but
It's a
I'll
big
have
question.
to pass that on to Colin. 'Cause-
Yeah, for sure.
I was just going to jump into the quick thought of two different ones. The the housing impacts theme, I appreciate the concept, but I think maybe like some continued work on wording around that one. Because I think there's just like something about framing it as housing impacts that is I don't think it's quite what is intended by it. But I think the point raised is really important about people having to live like, and it ties to the equity conversation or theme below, because people end up having to live really far. So like there's some links there, but so I really like the theme. I know it's not helpful. Like I just can't think of a way to reframe it. One of the theme, I just lost my train of thought on, what was it? Oh, I think it was on the state of good repair theme. And I was trying to read back fast, but I felt like this could benefit from a little more of the multimodal language and references to just make sure that when we're talking about state of good repair, it ties to rail trails, it ties to bike paths, it ties to, Steve, what you were mentioning at the beginning of like good shoulders on the roads so that you can ride an e-bike. So it felt like this could be another place to just underscore the multimodal piece a little bit more as well.
I don't know how many of you have ridden a train any real distance lately, but that it's so popular is interesting because a lot of the aspects of the experience are pretty bad. So um, that's thought-provoking. I mean, it could be a lot better. Even just cutting back the trees more reliably so that there aren't huge delays often just from trees being down on a fair day. That would be a start.
So I used to ride the Downeaster from Portland down to Dover on a pretty regular basis. And honestly, compared to driving, it was about 1,000 times better.
I have to agree with that.
Me too. Especially with the kind of more recently with the track. They are doing track work in Maine. I'm not sure in New Hampshire, but to increase the ability to host, I think they're adding a second track in certain areas to be able to have two-way travel, which is going to speed things up.
Careful. Alrighty.
Yeah, they're doing that in I want to say kind of Sanford area.
Yep.
If we have a minute or two for the land use chapter, I have some thoughts about it, and I just saw Steve.
Yeah, I was just gonna move on to the land use chapter.
I would say, Steve, Steve raised a really good point that I agree with. So I want to, if he's somewhere he can speak, I think that's good to chat about.
I just thought I would write it down because I didn't know we were going to get to it. That was my thing. But the overall point was it feels like, there's a broader, I forget what the terminology here is, of lens of environmental stewardship. It feels like that's actually absent from all the themes and goals, pretty much. I mean, there's nods towards it, and but I don't feel like it's called out in any particular way as we get deeper down. Although I was curious about, and I think this is something Dover is looking at in its master plan, is that idea of how do we start to measure ecosystem services and use those measures in our planning and decision making. And I'm wondering if that's a way to embed environmental stewardship or an awareness of environmental services into our planning. So that's the general idea. The other thought I had, the idea as we get down into the equity theme, love having ensuring all voices are part of the conversation. It seems a sub point of that is having a UNH student in commission meetings. That's great. But what are the voices that are absent, and how are we actually going to engage with them? I think if that's going to be a theme and a goal, there's a lot of work to be done there that we need to think about. How do we connect with those people and make it easier for them to participate, whoever they are?
Okay.
In terms of land use, as a homesteader, I've been doing this already, and I think that's great. But I think in general, given the cost of a lot of things going up, from gas or transportation to food, more and more places will need to be producing meaningful amounts of food for us to be eating at all. I think conservation land, a lot of places will need to be rethought how they're approached so that there's grazing options, so that there is more potential for the many people who want to raise food to have access to land, which is a tricky topic given our reliance on property taxes, for instance.
Great. Okay. Any other thoughts on land use and environment?
Just I couldn't figure out how to do it, but a thumbs up to what Krista added to the chat as well.
Point two. Great. Well, if there's no other thoughts, I think we did really good in getting through both of these documents. So I appreciate everyone's promptness in reading everything.
I'm going to drop in a link. Stanford's done some good work on measuring ecosystem surfaces. So I'm dropping a link into that, something that you can, if it's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Steve.
So Lindsay, if I just take a moment here, Barrington, somehow the Swains Lake Association persuaded the Conservation Commission to forego their money to put poisons in the water, which is really ironic. I mean, supposedly it's safe. I'm deeply skeptical. It's a really weird thing that just happened in Barrington, and it's rather disturbing. That's not the way we should be spending our resources, in my opinion.
Yeah, I saw your note on that. I have some more things to follow up on, so thanks. If the group is still going in the room, I think one that I'm rereading right now, that I'm remembering tripped me up a little bit, but the framing on number 2 of balanced spaces, I think it's another one where I'm not quite sure that framing, and again, I'll try to do more thinking on that, but I think the other comment that I had related to that is I felt like this was one spot too, that it's this funny balance of like our high interest in green space and waterways and all this calls for thoughtful development. It still feels, and I think the point is saying that like in the context of those things, thoughtful development is the angle we want to go. But to me, it reads a little bit like we want always development. And I think the point is that like we want to balance all of these things, is kind of what I was taking away from that one. But it read a little like leaving out that we also want places that are places without development.
I'm wondering, given that we're into our whatever year of drought, essentially, and recent research that the East Coast is going to be increasingly vulnerable to wildfire, should we be thinking about that urban wilderness interface more? And in that, we've got stuff about, coastal flooding and being aware of sea level rise, but in that community resilience, section, should we be broadening our thinking to beyond just sea level rise, even though I understand why that's there?
Absolutely. We need better fire access roads, which could also double as multi-use trails. So yeah, I think that's important.
Dude, that brings up for me, the other thing that I hope that we can do in this document is highlight the interconnectedness of all of these things. So, I feel like it's, and because of I understand why, but everything ends up feeling very siloed. And I think in when we write this document, the interconnections or the dependencies of one thing on the other and their impacts, like especially second, third order impacts. We need to be thinking about how do we communicate that and think more systemically around these questions.
Okay.
And find solutions that can double up, right? As Steve just pointed out.
I think that's a very good point. And the fact that all of these problems, issues, whatever, are all interconnected is really important, I think, to highlight.
Yeah, and I think it's like there are also risks that a quote unquote solution to one could make a different one worse. And so to your point, it's like, how do you think about this all together? Which is hard, but like I think that's how we make progress is doing the hard thinking.
Yeah, and there are tools and processes. I mean, this is not there are ways to do that, which I think we can develop that capacity. That could be a goal, the capacity to think systemically as an organization to help people plan systemically.
Krista, I saw your comments in the chat. That makes a lot of sense too, and I'll add that. These are really great comments, though. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think it's like kind of maybe because we think about this, I think it is in here a bit. So this is it's not necessarily a critique, but I think the sort of continuing to underscore that these aren't like environment isn't a trade-off from land use. Like having a healthy environment makes it so that we can use the land that we are using well. And so just like continue to have that in the back of folks' minds while they're writing is like avoid language that makes it sound like we're picking one or the other.
Okay.
And then
yeah, both ends. It's a both ends. Yeah.
An interesting example of the different pressures that are tricky. So Satwasser, it's the biggest conservation area. It's sort of northwest of the Lee Circle. The main artery, it was the original colonial road that goes through it, went right past a beaver pond. The Conservation Commission, to accommodate the rare cedars and to let the beavers do what they want, they rerouted a walking path around the original road, which makes sense for them. But it didn't really make it bike friendly anymore. So it made those trails a little incoherent. Some of the values of the Conservation Commission are not really to encourage good access because they don't want people out there partying and stuff. So it's a tricky balance they make. If they had more resources, more people helping to work on trails, all those things could help.
Another aspect that, excuse me, I think that we need to address is the fact that we're getting legislative pressure from Concord on some of these housing things and environmental stuff that is not necessarily helpful. Taking away some of the, I guess you could say, home rule aspects of zoning and things like that, where they are mandating certain changes, which some of them are good, some of them are bad, but it feels to me like they are treating everything as a nail because all they've got is a hammer.
Mm-hmm. Glenn, and you were saying that you feel like that's something that needs to be addressed here, the legislative pressure component from Congress.
Well, what I'm saying is that as a collective of towns, regional planning, that we have the ability to influence some of those legislators to maybe be able to either push back or help them realize that there are certain regional issues that they may not be cognizant of, or that they might benefit from our technical expertise that they don't necessarily have.
This kind of fits into, I don't know if this is a theme or something that could assist in communicating the themes, and this is my first time kind of going through this document as a process with the SRPC. So I'm a little but like quantifying things, some of where does the ability to collect data and share data amongst communities kind of fit into this, so that I don't know, that maybe it's a communication piece, or but also I think specifically around kind of quantifying and qualifying some of these themes with data, especially in the it's harder to qualify community and regional character or something like that. I don't know. I'm just finding new ways to communicate that in a way that a administrator can look and say, oh yeah, I can see this theme running through different pieces of data, I guess. I don't know. But then also sharing that amongst, when it's something that doesn't just end at Dover's borders, it's also involves Somersworth and Rochester and Raleigh. It's like there are ways that we can kind of, I don't know, fit data collection, I guess, is part of this, is a theme I'd like to see as part of this, or making sure that we have a way to quantify aspects of these themes.
So yeah, I mean, a huge part of what the data team does is like you're familiar with the data
Yeah.
snapshot that they do every
Yep.
year. So maybe it's how do we like better utilize that as a tool
Yeah.
to
Or
make informed decisions?
yeah, inserting it into aspects of this, it would get more mileage out of the data snapshot too, I think. But
In terms,
Sorry.
yeah, in terms of tourism, so Barrington, you can see in the annual fluctuations of population that it's a tourist town. A lot of people come here for the summers, and tourism is important. Tourism is important in New Hampshire in general. And we had a UNH facilitated visioning session on what the people of Barrington want, and one of those things was public waterfront. And several waterfront properties are already owned by the town, but for various concerns of liability and fiscal constraints, they didn't actually want to proceed with that. So it was an unfortunate combination of circumstances. It would be great to, I don't know what their obstacle is other than money. They're concerned about lifeguarding and whatever, or they wanted to be able to sell the property. Anyway, so it's frustrating that even though hundreds of people came out to say, this is kind of what we want, they said, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I wonder if there could be some, I really appreciate hearing that, Steve, because I always think water, both like drinking and recreation and all of that. And it's like not a fully formed thought, but I wonder if there's something on a regional scale, if access to the sort of recreational and human health benefits of being in water spaces ended up being some sort of theme woven in here, and then that might mean that something that the Regional Planning Commission could then help places like Barrington and others work through some of those challenges in a way that, because I think there's some people that argue like access to water is a human right, and other, like, not even just drinking water, but like access to these water spaces. So there might be a neat way to think about how regionally we could facilitate recreational access to water. Public recreational, not private recreational access to water.
I mean, there's places to swim around here, but it's posted that you're not supposed to.
I think we're gonna be let into the meeting again. Just really quick, I wanted to ask on the sets component, is everyone comfortable with where your comments are and votes are, or does anyone need to do more work?
Natalie, the one thing that I couldn't figure out where to put on was just similar to the discussion we just had about land use, is it felt like there's just like some environment stuff missing from the SEDS. Like, healthy environment is really important for our local economy, and there's like kind of nods to it, but it just, that was like the big gap, but I didn't know where to put it.
The system is shrinking.
The
So
online.
fewer and fewer people are gonna be able to make the trip they need to. And so the way to change the perception is to have it run frequently enough that you have more people on it. So that's very supply. Thank you, find it useful.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Okay. So citizens forum? And Jen, let's go.
Before we all run away, I know the time is finite here to have these conversations and provide some feedback. Encourage you, any of the drafts that we send out, please send us comments back. We do like getting comments back. To, be proactive, post this meeting. If there are things that you think of or you didn't have a chance to express here today, also please send them. You can send your comments to any one of us. We're generally nice to one another and we share with one another. So make sure the right person gets any of the comments that you send in. So yeah, just wanted to acknowledge that, and we will continue having similar conversations. Probably not every meeting, but as Mike mentioned, we've got a staggered adoption for each of the plan components throughout the rest of the year. So we will be bringing some pieces back for further conversations.
All right. Motion to adjourn. I'll move by, and seconded by Michael Williams, Michael Lehrman. All in favor?
Aye.
Chris,